Greetings and salutations, Greek students. We continue our study with Croy's Primer of Biblical Greek in Lesson 2, learning about the present active indicative verbs. So let's turn to the chapter, beginning with a little grammar review. Just as a reminder of how English and Greek grammar work, the subject of any sentence is usually a noun, and it's the subject of a verb. The verb is, of course, the action of the sentence, and the direct object is the recipient of the action in a typical sentence. So, to review, of course, the sentence, John wrote a gospel. John is the subject, wrote is the verb, and gospel is the direct object. Now, the way English syntax works is that you have to describe or define your subject, your verb, and your object by word order. That's the determiner of these subjects. So if you take the same words and you rearrange them, a gospel wrote John, you have a totally different subject, the same verb, and the direct object has changed. So in English, word order determines the function of nouns and direct objects and verbs in sentences. Unlike English, Greek is what's called an inflected language, which means that the verb in this case, and we'll talk about how the nouns function as well, is going to morph or change. And when it morphs or changes, it's going to reflect the subject of the sentence and help you understand, oh, here's what I'm looking at. Now, it adds some clarity, but it is different for Greek reading from an English-based language reference. So as an inflected language, the words are going to change to fit their grammatical function. Greek verbs have 5 characteristics. You don't need to memorize what these characteristics are, but we're going to see them in action. The first one is person, right? You have your first person, I, the second person, you, the third person, he, she, it. But then you, in addition to person, you also have number. So the first person, plural, is going to be we. First person singular is I. Second person in English, singular and plural, is both you. But in Texas, where my wife's from, you say y'all, or you guys are in Tennessee. Y'all is the second person plural, right? So person refers to the perspective of the speaker. I, first person. You, second person. They, third person. And number, singular or plural. We also are going to talk about tense and kind or aspect. We're going to save that for later. And voice. For right now, we're just looking at the present active indicative verbs. So we'll talk more about some of these other aspects of the verb later. But for now, it's important to be able to think about person, number, and right now we're in the present tense active voice only. So we're going to skip some of this to come down to how we would diagram this or have this in a chart form. You're going to learn that in Greek there's quite a few charts. First person of the verb echo, I have, you have, he, she, it has, we have, you or y'all have, and they have. So if I was going to write this in Greek, you'll notice where does the verb change? At the ending, the suffix. Echo, eches, eche, ekomen, ekete, ekusi. Now I should note that sometimes you have a nu that gets added on here called the movable nu. Croy talks about this on page 9. I'm not going to spend a lot of time right now for the sake of clarity, but we'll return to that later on. So your endings are o, ace, a, amen, ere, and usi. Now, this is the kind of, or usin, sometimes the nu is in there, sometimes it's not. This is the kind of thing that's worth memorizing or having quick reference to be able to work on your translations. O, ace, a, amen, edi, usi. This is the kind of thing when you go on a date with that significant other, you can sort of be writing on your napkin when whatever they're saying bores you, okay? So this is crucial information you're going to need to learn how to read Greek, the present active indicative. Now there's more here about how verbs work. I want to skip that for now. We'll come back to it later on and just focus on these forms, the forms of the present active indicative. You begin with the verb luo because it's nice and short. I loose. luo. So this is the word that's used, for example, when Jesus encounters John the Baptist in Matthew chapter 3, and John the Baptist says, look, I'm not fit to untie, to loose this guy's sandals. Okay, that's the verb luo. Luo, I loose. You loose, second person singular, lu-ace. Third person singular, he, she, it looses, lu-a. First person plural, lu-amen, we loose. Second person plural, lu-ete, y'all loose. Third person, lu-usi or lu-usin, they loose. So this is the present active indicative. And this pattern, this o, ace, a, amen, ete, usi pattern is consistent with these verbs in the present active indicative. So you have, after luo, we have another verb, pistuo. And the best way to learn this is by practice. So pistuo, I believe, you're going to write pistuo, I believe. Second person singular, you believe, pistuo, ace. You believe. Pistuo, ace, a. He, she, or it believes. Pistuo, amen. We believe. Pistuo, ete, you or y'all believe. And third person plural, pistuo, usi, sometimes usin, they believe. So these are the forms o, ace, a, amen, ete, usi. You're going to see these over and over again. I believe. Now we go to another verb, blepo, I see. Now instead of starting at the top and going down, it's helpful to start at the bottom. So third person plural, they see. That would be blep, usin. Sometimes has the new on there. Blep, ete in the second person, you or y'all see. First person plural, blepamen, we see. Third person singular, blep a. He, she, it sees. Second person singular, you see. And that's just you, just the one, not you, but you. So you have to remember this second person singular and the second person plural. Mostly in the New Testament, you're going to see a lot of these second person plurals because you have people addressing whole audiences rather than individuals, but you do sometimes see the second person singular as well. First person singular, blepete or blepo, I see. So it's helpful to test yourself by going top to bottom, front to back, starting in the middle. So let's go with this next one, akuo, which means I hear. So let's start in the middle with the third person singular. Aku a. This is the verb for he, she, it hears. Present active indicative. He, she, it hears. First person plural. Aku amen. We hear. Second person plural. Aku ete. You or y'all hear. Third person. Aku usi or usin. Sometimes it has the movable nu there. They hear. Now we go back to the very beginning. Akuo. I hear. Second person singular. aku ace. You, just you, hear. One more example. Didasko. I teach. Didasko. I teach. And this means, it's our teaching verb. I undid. Didask ace, you teach. O ace a, did ask a, he, she, or it teaches. And of course, whether it's a he, she, or an it depends on the noun, the subject of your verb here. Did ask Amen. We teach. That's the first person plural. Second person plural. Did ask ete. You teach. And of course, this is y'all, the plural you. You teach. And in the third person singular, did ask usen. Again, that movable new, page 9 of Croy. And that is they teach. I want to spend a bit of time here, now that we've gone through these present active indicatives, that o, ace, a endings, briefly talking about the infinitive. Now, we're going to talk about the infinitive in a later chapter. They're indeclinable rural nouns. You don't need to know what that means right now. It just means that they're not limited by person or number, but they're defined by tense. All you need to know for right now is that an infinitive should be translated as to in the verbal idea. So in the case of luo, right, I loose, if you do this ain ending, the present active infinitive ending, it's to loose. Blepo, I see, in the present active indicative or present active infinitive ending, ain, epsilon, iota, nu, ain, to see. Pistu o, I see, in this present active infinitive ending, pistu ain, to believe. Didasko, I teach, in the present active indicative, present active infinitive, this is the infinitive ending, to teach. So, like I said, later on in the semester, we will talk in more detail about how infinitives work and what they do grammatically, because they are more complicated. But for now, for the purposes of translation, it's helpful simply for you to know the present active indicative, those o, ace, a, and edi, usi endings, as well as the present active infinitive, which is just that verbal idea, to whatever, to loose, to teach, to see, to hear. And that's the epsilon, iota, nu ending, and there's just one. So you have those endings to learn. O, ace, a, and edi, usi, in the present active indicative, as well as the present active infinitive, epsilon, iota, nu. That's lesson 2, and you are already on your way to translating and reading New Testament Greek.